Daniel Ricciardo's saga just doesn't seem to end at all. The Aussie has agreed to buy out terms with McLaren, and it seems like him finding a driving spot for 2023 will be one of the biggest challenges of his career, after it became evident that he isn't a very likeable asset on the grid, as many people have thought so when the buyout terms came to light. Ricciardo is now struggling to find a seat for the 2023 season. However, old talks about him suiting up for HAAS have transpired yet again, and it seems like Steiner isn't willing to sign Ricciardo off the list, but had a different approach when it comes to whether Ricciardo deserves his seat or not. In this video, we're going to talk about Steiner's words for Ricciardo, how the connections between Ricciardo and HAAS started, and how big the chances are of his collaboration happening anytime soon, so don't go anywhere. Before we get into the recent comments that Steiner made for Ricciardo, let's dive a bit deeper into how these two sides were related in the first place. When it became evident that Ricciardo isn't one of the top candidates that Alpine is considering for the Alonso vacant seat, the rumors about Mick Schumacher leaving HAAS due to bad results started. Although the German HAAS scored his first career points in HAAS, it simply wasn't enough for him to kind of be considered as the main guy that HAAS will continue from 2023 and beyond. Steiner spoke about Ricciardo and said that when it comes to signing him, the teams need to be careful amid all of the talks that he approached Ricciardo prior to the summer break and reaching out to him for the potential vacant spot from 2023 and beyond. However, Steiner refused these talks as serious ones, as he urged the importance of being careful when they approached Ricciardo. As he said, everyone thinks now Danny is available. We have to take Daniel. Maybe we don't want Daniel? Why do you think he has left McLaren? We need to be careful here. It's not just about what we have done, it's what we can do. Nevertheless, Steiner spoke yet again about Ricciardo and the chance of him signing with HAAS, as the German had an interview with RTL saying that it's all in the Aussie's hands and he needs to reach out to the team whether he wants to drive for them or not. He said, in his situation, Daniel first has to decide for himself what he does. It makes little sense to persuade him to do something. He has to decide for himself. If he feels like it, he will certainly call. Otherwise, he will probably say, I'll do a sabbatical or something else. On the other hand, Steiner spoke about some other prospects that are favorites for the spot in HAAS, not ruling out Mick Schumacher either, saying that the chances the young German will drive for HAAS in 2023 are 50-50. You put yourself under pressure, and we don't need that. We only play against ourselves. We don't really have any time pressure. All the others have the time pressure, but we don't. That's an advantage we don't take away from ourselves, said Steiner, who continued to talk about Nico Hülkenberg and the chances that the veteran will join HAAS in the upcoming period. As he said, a man like Nico brings experience. What can a driver do to make the team better and bring us to the top? How much risk do you want to take? With a young driver, you usually take more risks because you don't know how far he can go. You can't calculate that mathematically. Yet it seems like Daniel Ricciardo would bring the most experience and knowledge to the team compared to all the other candidates. True, he's had a slump in his form in the past 2 seasons with McLaren, which is the main reason why we weren't able to see him performing at his best, but that doesn't mean that Ricciardo is done for F1. Bad seasons can happen, and we've seen drivers like Alonso coming back from a year off and then performing extraordinarily well. Alonso is a 2-time world champion and is at least a class ahead of Ricciardo, but we don't have to go that far away to see a successful comeback story, as Ricciardo's potential teammate Kevin Magnussen is also one of these successful comeback stories. According to Ricciardo's former boss Christian Horner, he doesn't understand why Alpine hasn't signed Ricciardo for the future, given the fact that both sides have a positive history from 2018 to 2020. When asked about who should Alpine sign in the upcoming period, Horner said, I think I probably would go with Ricciardo, to be honest with you. They obviously know him from a couple of seasons ago, and he was very together during his last season there, scoring podiums, and I think he's the type of guy that I think you could rebuild him. It's obviously not been a great experience for him at McLaren for whatever reason, but you just have to think back to some of the drives that he did for us, some of the wins he had, the podiums, some of the stunning overtakes he was capable of. That's still there. I'm sure he just needs a bit of a reset. You don't just forget how to deliver, so I hope for him he gets another opportunity and gets himself back on the grid for next year. finished Horner. Is everyone this optimistic about Ricciardo's comeback season? No. Jacques Villeneuve spoke about Ricciardo's chances to sign with Alpine, as he isn't surprised a single bit as to why isn't the Aussie considered a top candidate when it comes to signing with the Enstone-based team. When talking about this matter, Jacques said, "Why would he be? He had 2 terrible years at Renault and 2 even more terrible years at McLaren. That's 4 years. Almost half of his Formula 1 career was bad. Alpine has no reason to take him, especially when he's driven there before. The modern cars just don't seem to suit his driving style. He was impressive at Red Bull. He showed amazing overtaking maneuvers. He was ahead of Max at the beginning. But in the end, Max started to get a handle on him. Then he switched, and after the switch, something seems to have happened that he never managed to get a handle on. He never recovered from that," finished Jack. He also spoke about the chance of Ricciardo sitting out the 2023 season, which has been said from the Aussie too when he spoke with Sergio Perez in the Drivers' Parade at the Dutch GP, saying that he would participate for a seat in 2024 and would sit out the 2023 season. But according to Jack, this isn't something that would help Ricciardo in the long term, as it could only make him lazy and he needs to accept whatever's thrown at him, adding, "It could make him lazy. You can take a year off if you're an Alonso, a Schumacher, if you've been world champion and won a lot of races, if you know in the paddock that you'll always be at your best no matter what season. After 4 bad years, don't do that. You take what you can get. If you have an offer to drive in Formula 1, then you take every cockpit. In public, you will say, you don't want to drive for one of the back teams, but if that's the only contract you can get, then you'll sign it," finished Jacques. Now that it's evident that Ricciardo's chances are thinned down to just a couple of starting seats, which aren't very keen on signing him, and the reserve driver role in Mercedes or possibly Red Bull, what's next for the Aussie? He does have a chance to participate in NASCAR, IndyCar 500 or even Indy Lights, but that isn't something that he said he has a plan for in the future. He also shared an update to his fans as he recently spoke on the Fitzy and Whipper radio shows, saying, "When I say I don't know, I don't have a contract yet for next year. Could it still happen? It could. I guess I'm not getting too caught up in the next year. Of course, I want to race, I want to be up on the grid, I want to be competing, but I'm not kind of seeing next year as all or nothing. Obviously 2024 is something I want to be aware of and look at. So that's kind of where I'm like, if it means taking a step back to then take 2 steps forward, and that's what we're trying to figure out at the moment, me and my team. So that could be a year off," finished Ricciardo. With that being said, what do you think is next for the 8-time race winner? Do you think he's still got what it takes in order to compete in the sport? Or do you think that his days are well numbered and there isn't any other alternative in F1 for his future? Let us know in the comments below.